Hello, 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 coaches and leaders. I am so excited. I have Steve Barkley on with me, and I feel like you're a little bit, Steve, I feel like you're a little bit like instructional coaching royalty. Like you are one of the OGs. You were part of like what invented instructional coaching. So I am so excited to have you on. And everyone listening, I just want you to know before we started recording, Steve was sharing stories about coaching and just the beginnings of it all. And I was soaking all of it in. So, Steve, I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Great to be
Yeah.
here.
So, I would love you just to share with folks. I know most people listening probably know exactly who you are. I would just love you to share with folks that maybe haven't heard about you yet. What do you do now? And kind of, where did you start with coaching?
Yeah. So I'll give you real quick the start. I entered the teaching profession in a coaching climate
Okay.
when the word didn't exist.
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
I entered teaching in an experimental program where I
Mhm.
got to be a student teacher my entire senior year at university in a
Uh-huh.
laboratory school.
Okay.
And so I was placed in a grade four classroom, two or a master teacher, two student teachers, an intern, and visiting professors. So I was observed and got feedback every day for 180 days. And I left there and took my first job teaching in an open concept K-8 school at the middle grades level. And it was four teachers in one big room with
Mhm.
100 kids and two paraprofessionals. And I was so excited about my undergraduate program, I convinced the university to join the school as a professional development center. So,
Uh-huh.
as a first year teacher, I had visiting college interns in my room for the whole year.
Wow.
So, I spent my whole career always being observed, always getting feedback. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I began working in teacher training, I
Hmm.
discovered other people didn't have that opportunity.
No.
And that's what led to a career focused on peer coaching, mentoring, instructional coaching, school administrators as coaches. And today, I live in Switzerland. I do most of my coaching virtually, but hit some travel, usually more for training than for the coaching delivery.
Yeah. This is fantastic. This is just wild. You're around when it got invented. You're part of the inventing, right? So this is so cool. All right. So today we are going to talk about student learning. Oh, why do I keep forgetting the P? Student learning production behaviors. There we go. And and the thing I wanted to talk with you about was in classrooms when we are coaching, right? We walk into a classroom and we're observing a teacher. The question is, what are we looking for?
Yeah.
Right. And so, what I love that you talk about and you write blogs about it, it's on your website, is we need to be looking at the student actions. That's what I'd call student behavior, student actions, right? And the relationship of what the teacher actions, how that's impacting the student actions, right? So I'd love to talk with you about that, what you call the SLPBs. And I believe do you have like a list? You kind of have a list of like most impactful
Uh,
behaviors?
a starter list, a starter list. Uh, the list came about because I was observing in a middle school that was using what they called station rotation. And the teachers had most of the classrooms set up so some kids were getting direct instruction, some kids were working independently, and other kids were working collaboratively. And it jumped out at me that the students needed different learning behaviors every time they changed stations, and nobody was making that clear. Um, but but to back it up one step further, what really pushed me to that is I enough working with vocational teachers and with performing arts instructors and athletic coaches, they totally get it. If you're coaching a sport and you got 90 minutes of practice, almost all of your planning time is built around what it is the performers are going to do during practice. And there's this small piece of what do I have to do to get them to do that. And when that hit me, I came to the phrase that teachers don't cause student achievement, students cause student achievement. So then when I put that into a backwards planning model, it was okay, identify what the achievement is you're looking for, then identify what would the learner need to do that would cause them to get that skill. And now back up. And so now my planning for teachers is
Yeah.
how am I going to get the kids engaged in that behavior? So when I saw PLCs doing what they call unpacking the standards,
Mm-hmm.
they would look at a standard and the question they were asking was, how should I teach this?
Uh-huh.
So I came in and said, no, you get the wrong question there. Question is, what would kids do to learn it?
Yes.
Once you know what kids would do to learn it, now you're ready to figure out what you're going to do as a teacher.
Yeah. And that's, I didn't tell you this earlier, but this is actually how I was coached as a brand new teacher. I was using this model. But no one named you as the person, but I was taught in exactly this model. We would look at student data and we say, where's a gap in data? Okay, what were the students doing to cause this gap in data? What was I doing as the teacher to cause that? And then what do I need? The foundational, do I need knowledge, skills, or mindsets to change my own behavior? So I love this. And so as a coach, I brought this mindset into coaching. And so I wanted to ask you, when you're coaching teachers, right? So you're in classrooms, right? And you're observing, uh, you're looking at student actions and teacher actions, correct?
Yeah. If if you were to go back to the beginning of my career, I spent most of my time in the classroom watching the teacher and
Yes.
giving the feedback to the teacher
Hmm.
on what I saw the teacher doing. Okay. Now, probably 90+% of my time is
Yeah.
watching the students,
Hmm.
recording what the students are doing.
Uh-huh.
Now, if I think what the students are doing is going to cause students to reach the achievement, then I'm looking for what's the teacher doing or what has the teacher done that's causing that to happen.
Hmm.
If what the students are doing isn't likely to get me there,
Yeah.
now my question is, what would the teacher change in order to get a change in what the students are doing?
Yeah.
And what I uncovered as I stepped into that was I never have to tell the teacher what you're doing is wrong.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
And very often what you're doing is getting a certain group of kids to
Hmm.
do the right behavior.
Hmm.
Now, you got other kids who aren't doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So the reason you need to change is because they are. I'll give a real tiny example. As a teacher asked me, she said, Steve, could you come in and observe fifth period for me? And I
Hmm.
said, sure. What is it? And she says, I don't know what it is, but what I do second and third period works, but not in fifth. So I
Uh-huh.
went in and I observed fifth period and I sat down with her. And the first thing I said to her was, you're absolutely right. It's not working. And her first question was, what should I do? I said, well, I'm not sure, but I know it's not what you're doing in second and third. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That second and third period class,
Needed.
your actions got the actions from the kids you needed.
Hmm.
Fifth period, it isn't. So now let's start digging.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And we start with the student. Well, the students are doing this. And so, let's kind of, so you're in classrooms, you're really looking mostly at what the students are doing, right? And somewhat of what the teacher is doing. And then you sit down and have that coaching conversation. What does that look like, sound like when you're having the conversation about student behaviors and teacher actions?
So a rule that I take into the post conference is I don't want to tell the teacher anything she already knows.
Hmm.
So a common question I'll ask to start off a post conference. When you plan the lesson, there was a movie in your head
Hmm.
of what the kids were doing.
Hmm.
So during the lesson today, when did it match the movie?
Hmm.
And when didn't it match the movie?
Oh, I love that question.
Okay. And then what thoughts came to mind? What decisions did you make?
Hmm.
So if I've hopefully in the pre-conference I've had the teacher tell me what that movie was going to be. So then I'm part of my observation is helping to look for that movie. So sometimes in the pre-conference, a question I'll ask a teacher is how much of today's learning activity is one that you could plan, and how much of today's learning activity is one that you're going to have to be making move by move by move decisions during the lesson based on what's happening. So all of those things set me up then to be observing the student behaviors. So I'm getting the teacher to tell me all the student behaviors she saw first
Mhm.
and what she thought about them. Then I'll start pointing out some student behaviors that I saw that she didn't mention.
I love
And
that.
I'm pretty sure the statement from John Hattie on this is that 80% of what kids are doing in the classroom isn't observed by the teacher. So the idea that you can have a colleague or an instructional coach, a school leader in the classroom seeing and hearing things that you aren't seeing and hearing is extremely critical.
It is for all teachers of all levels.
Absolutely. And
I
and
love
I say this, see, in my work, the most sophisticated teachers should be receiving the most coaching.
Say that again for the people in the back.
Yeah.
That is
The most
crazy.
the most sophisticated teachers should be receiving the most coaching. Why? Because they are working at the most complex level.
Yes.
They're trying to do 15 different things all at the same time.
Yes.
So the idea that they can ask a coach to watch one of them. See, the lesson you're coming into is a calculus lesson, but I
Uh-huh.
have this strong focus on a certain social emotional skill.
Uh-huh.
And so the fact that you can come into my classroom, don't pay any attention to anything that has to do with calculus, just record that. And matter of fact, it may come down to two kids that I'm
Yeah.
concerned about.
Yeah.
And
Yes. It's having a look for, right? Yes. It's what am I
yeah,
actually looking for? And you and I are going to talk in another episode about that. I'm so excited to talk, really focus on the pre-conference. But I want to kind of, I want to look at, so the first part of the coaching conversation is you saying, I saw these student behaviors, right? Student actions. And then there's a next steps, right? The what are we going to do to improve? What does that look and sound like?
well, so let's describe the student behavior that you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now we'll talk about what teacher behaviors are more likely to get me that student behavior. So, real simple. You had actually, I wrote about this one. Observed a teacher, and she wanted to be focused on student engagement,
Mm-hmm.
and she had the kids off in groups of
Mm-hmm.
four, working on a problem that she gave them. And all during that time, engagement was really good. And about the last 15 minutes of class, she stopped, and she had each group report out to the whole class, and you could see the engagement
Drop.
drop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Whole group. Yep.
So then she could describe that to me that she saw it drop.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what are possibilities?
Mm-hmm.
And now I can say out loud, a thought hit my mind. I wonder what would have happened if instead of groups reporting out to the whole class, they reported out to another group
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they heard that other groups. And I'm wondering what three of those groups around the room instead of whole class
Mm-hmm.
would have got you more of what you told me that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the coaching now is making the connection
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
between the things that teacher has control. Point out to you don't have any control over the kids' behaviors
Mm-hmm.
other than
Yeah.
a
You
behavior
can
that you decide to
you can
take on.
influence it.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
now let's decide what are options, what choices are out there. I
Yeah.
might start that open-ended with the teacher.
Yeah.
Was there a spot in the lesson where you would have liked more engagement than you got?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have thoughts about what you would change or modify to get there.
Yeah.
And that I call that then I'm moving into what I like to call a thinking partner. The,
Mm-hmm.
the, the coach is thinking out loud with the teacher, and it's kind of a co-construction between their thoughts out loud turns into an idea that the teacher wants to follow through. Now,
Yes.
my next coaching session, I might come in and be totally focused on the teacher
Mm-hmm.
because now the
Right.
teacher has told me she wants to change behavior. So
Yeah.
she's looking for the coach to focus on whether or not she changes that behavior. And
Yes.
after a while, we may come back now again and now
Uh-huh.
go back to looking at the kids to see whether or not her change in teacher behavior created the change she wanted in student learning production behaviors.
I'm sorry, link's so big. I love that this is exactly how I train coaches. So it's when we are setting goals with teachers, my favorite types of goals are student action goals and student learning goals. And then when we're in classrooms, we're observing what are the students doing and what's the teacher doing or not doing that might be impacting that, right? And then when we set action steps, what are you going to do, teacher, to change? And then we're going back and we're actually looking much more at the teacher and seeing, did you do it? How well did you do
Yeah,
it? How did it
yeah.
impact student behaviors? And it's what I want to say to folks listening, right? For those folks that get real stuck in giving advice, the advice monster is loud and proud, right? And I think humans, we naturally want to help so badly and kind of fix things. An easy way to not get stuck in that advice pit is exactly what you're saying. If we can write observations of student actions and share with the teacher what we saw, that naturally presents an opportunity to have a conversation about how to improve that versus advice.
So you hit the magic word, conversation.
Yep.
So I use a model, conversation generates reflection,
Yep.
and reflection should generate a conscious action. So coming out of the coaching session as the teacher, I got engaged in a conversation.
Hmm.
It led me to this reflection,
Hmm.
and I'm making a choice now to walk out of here doing something purposeful
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
because of it. And if
Yeah.
I create that in an ongoing cycle, that's where continuous growth comes in.
Yeah. Now you and I agree on something, and we were talking about this earlier. You and I agree that we're not big on protocols. These are Steve's words. I stole Steve's words. And folks that have listened to the podcast, I'm not big on protocols. And so the thing I want to say, and I want to name this here, is this is not a protocol.
Right.
This this is not a
I,
protocol. This is a way of thinking about coaching as a skill.
I just wrote this to a coach that I'm coaching now, and she sent me a follow up, and she described this teacher that she's putting a plan together with,
Mhm.
and she asked me to suggest, you know, two observations or three. When should I be here? What should I be doing there? And I wrote back to her, it all depends.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first part depends on what's the teacher's initial responses to you, and then
Right.
how quickly does the teacher change her teaching behaviors?
Mhm.
You don't want to be in the classroom looking at student behaviors if the teacher behaviors hadn't changed yet.
Right.
If the
That's
teacher had, so the whole thing, so to lay out, we need six conferences and they need to be
right.
laid out in this order and follow these steps. That's the part that doesn't match up for me.
That's exactly it. That's fantastic. All right, I want to bring this to resistance to change. I want to talk about that. How does, this way of thinking about coaching, how does this impact resistance to change in your experience?
Well, I find that once you can, I'm going to make my statement loud. We didn't hire instructional coaches to change teacher behavior. We hired instructional coaches to change student behavior. Because if a teacher can if when I use the statement, teachers don't cause student achievement, students cause student achievement. If teachers are causing student achievement, they're cheating.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't necessarily literally, but if you give kids shortcuts, you tell kids to flip the two numbers and multiply, and you'll get the right answer. I describe that as cheating. The student's not doing the work that the student needs to do to understand. Okay, and so once I back up from that and say to a teacher, it's all about changing the student behavior, and we don't have to label anything you did as wrong. There's a whole group of kids, like my earlier story. Second and third period, what you're doing works. It doesn't work fifth period. Okay. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with the kids. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
means, I'll give you one other word to put into it that I find really helpful. And that is, I see teaching as a profession versus a trade. So I describe if you're working in a trade, you learn the right way to do something, and then you're supposed to do it the right way. Okay. If you're working in a profession, you study a lot, you learn a lot, and you conduct experiments with your clients. So doctors experiment with patients, and attorneys experiment with the case, and teachers experiment with learners. And so you didn't do it wrong. This kid responded differently.
Yeah.
So now you're learning every moment
Hmm.
as a teacher. You're learning every moment about who your learners are now and what impact your behavior has on those.
Yes. Yes. And this is so human centered because one, it's not a protocol where you just kind of you follow these steps and that's all you're doing. And you really are, I want to give this distinction. I'm not sure how to say this. W- in this way of thinking about coaching, just because we are looking, observing mainly at student behaviors does not mean we are not working with the teacher. We're not skipping over the teacher to impact students. And I think that is a mistake that other models of coaching do sometimes, that we are so focused that on the student that we actually don't coach through people's humanity and really access, okay, there's a human, there's an adult human in that classroom that's influencing and impacting the student behaviors, right? And so, but it's an access to have a conversation about those student behaviors through their humanity because we are co-creating this. And that relates to those catalyst mindsets I was sharing with you earlier, Steve, about we have these mind the human, the adult human in the room thinks about things and the students are thinking about things. And so when we are having a teacher grapple with changing their behaviors, right? They're behaving a certain way because of the way they think about things.
Hmm.
Literally, right? So we're asking them to think differently and they are motivated by all these things. Is this relevant and valuable to me? Do I feel heard and challenged and do I feel I belong and do I trust you, right? So they're navigating all of these very human mindsets, motivations to change their behavior, right? And I just want to kind of name that we have access to that if we're not going straight to the teacher and saying you need to change that.
I'll give you a concrete example, especially working with beginning teachers. And I do this when I'm training coaches or mentors working with beginning teachers. And the teacher wants you to come in and model a lesson. Okay, so my issue is the first time you model the lesson, the person you're modeling for has to observe the kids and record what they're doing. And then the question you ask them afterwards, did they see what the kids were doing? And then the question is, do you want to get kids to do that? Okay. If you tell me you want to get kids to do it, I'll come back and model again.
Yes.
And the second time, you can watch me and
Yes.
you can look for connections between what I'm doing and what the student behaviors are. But teachers who are learning teacher behaviors or having teacher behaviors modeled for them without getting the person to focus on the impact that it has on the learners. I was working with a high school math coach, and he was telling me early on he was going crazy because he would do these model lessons, and he said, "Steve, I can't tell you how great my faculty is. They'd sit there, they'd write down everything I would do, and then they'd come back to me and tell me it didn't work." And he said, I'd go back to work with their kids and it would work fine. And I couldn't figure it out. And he said, I finally figured it out. They were doing exactly what I did. So whatever he did third, they did third, regardless of what the kids
The
did
kids
after
did.
one and two to,
Yes.
to get the third. They were trying to follow the script of his
Yes.
lesson. And they weren't engaged in all the understanding the thinking that was going on in his head for
Yes.
all the decisions he was making.
We're building skills in people and ways of thinking. And I think this is kind of, we're going to need to wrap up, but and I just think about one of the things I say often about resistance to change is it's a human experience. We hire critical thinkers in schools and then we ask them to comply with changes they didn't choose.
Yep.
And
Powerful.
so that if we're at, this idea of thinking about like follow these steps versus I'm going to help build your skills right? One is very human-centered versus task-centered. Follow these steps. And that
And,
causes resistance to
and,
change.
and and not only building your skills, but especially when you're working with teachers more advanced in their career,
Yeah.
it can be just providing the reflective mirror,
Yeah.
because reflection by yourself is really difficult. I mean,
Hmm.
that's why I'm real big on professional learning communities. When I take my student work and I put it down and have three or four teachers look at it, they're going to see things I just didn't see.
Yeah. That's
And
so
so
great.
then nobody has to tell me what to do, just tell me what you saw.
Hmm.
And if
Yeah.
I'm an experienced teacher,
Hmm.
I begin to move ahead from that.
That's exactly it. I love it. Steve, this has been so much fun to have this conversation with you. If you could leave the coaches and leaders listening with one action step, one takeaway from this conversation, what would you suggest?
Well, since we did it, my coaching totally changed when I identified that it's the student learning behaviors.
Hmm.
And if I'll give you the real common one. I'll say to a teacher, "What's the most important thing that needs to happen in your class today?"
Hmm.
And the teacher will say to me, "I need kids to understand." And as soon as they say that, I call time out. Okay,
Hmm.
understands an outcome. So
Hmm.
what you're telling me now is the kid's going to walk in not understanding. What is it you need to get them to do that's going to cause understanding to develop? That's what I'll base my observation on. You
Hmm.
tell me what it is you want the kids to be doing, and I'll look for it.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here and
Thank you for
sharing
having
here.
me. Enjoyed it.
This
Enjoyed
is
it.
incredible. All right.